Most entrepreneurs become famous because of the successful companies they created, but many also have impact beyond their businesses. Yet these stories are often kept secret or the identity of the charitable entrepreneurs kept anonymous. This new series hopes to change that by hearing from the individuals whose lives were impacted by generous and resourceful entrepreneurs. Today, we're talking with Professor Jim Wetherbe of Texas Tech, author of 40 books and routinely recognized as one of the most influential people and consultants in the information technology field. Jim's life was saved literally by the founder of Best Buy. Thank you for being with me, Jim.
My pleasure.
So tell us, how did Dick Schulze, the founder of Best Buy, save your life?
Well, I was fighting my second battle of cancer, and he knew about the first one, and he said, if there is ever another event, I want to be the first person you call. And he's that kind of friend. I didn't want to call him at first. I tried to handle it myself, but the solutions they were coming up with locally were ones that I just would not accept. I'd rather end my life, basically, than do things like lose my intestines and stuff. So I went to try to get into MD Anderson, which is here in Texas, and they couldn't get me into July, and my kidney was shutting down because this tumor was in the way. And so Dick had told me a year ago, I want to be the first one you call. So I reached out to him and I said, I understand you got some new treatments that you've heard about. I've heard of immunotherapy. What do you think about that? And he said, I'm on it. And he called me up after checking out at Mayo Clinic, where he is a huge philanthropist. And he had someone contact me over the weekend. They set me up for the next week, set up a whole team of doctors, looked at the situation and said, hey, you're curable. And we will take a very different approach than what you're hearing where you are, the one that you don't want to take. And so we got up to Mayo right away. And I was just amazed by the teamwork they put together. And they obviously cared because they care about Dick Schulze. It was real obvious that he's a friend of Mayo Clinic. And they came up with a solution, in fact, better than I could have imagined. This immunotherapy is a new treatment that allows you to treat the tumor without using chemotherapy, which is what I used before, which is miserable, and radiation. And so they've got me on a path to recovery. That's just wonderful.
I have to ask, how did you first meet Dick Schulze?
Well, good question. I was at the University of Minnesota for 20 years. And of course, Best Buy was growing up in our backyard. And he had heard about me, and his way of interviewing me for being on his board was he came to Boston where I was giving a speech on strategic use of information technology. Afterwards, he came up, handed me his business card, and said, could we get together for breakfast sometime? And I didn't really look at the card. I just thought, sure. And I looked later and said, Dick Schulze, CEO and founder of Best Buy. So, well, that's a breakfast I don't want to miss. And so we got together and he invited me to join the board of Best Buy, which I was on for a number of years during the 90s and into the early 2000s. I helped get them on the internet, bestbuy.com, things of that nature. So that was the beginning of a friendship. And then I rotated off the board and we just remained friends after that.
And if I understand correctly, your friendship led to the creation of Entrepreneur and Innovation Exchange, or EIX.org. Can you tell us more?
Dick was looking for ways to have an impact. He has a work ethic that I find incredible. He works harder since he stepped down as CEO, just doing philanthropic things. And he wanted to help more entrepreneurs succeed. And so he had created the Schulze School of Entrepreneurship at the University of St. Thomas. And he was saying, what could I do to have a larger footprint? And so he knew that I'd been responsible for the MIS Quarterly, which was the top journal in the field of MIS at Minnesota. And so I said, why don't we create a whole new breakthrough type of journal that'll be social media based and just sort of show that the print journals that everyone's using today are obsolete. And that led to the creation of what we now know as EIX. And then the spinoff of familybusiness.org, which you were so graciously capable of being the founder of that.
So it must be very nice having a close friend like Dick Schulze. Did that make the launch of EIX easier? Was there any resistance?
Well, we had a grant from Best Buy for $500,000. We were researching, we call it the Institute for Internet Buyer Behavior. And just one of the fun findings we had was people would abandon a shopping cart when they saw shipping costs. So the big finding that went out in Business Week was if you want to sell on the internet, give free shipping. So you're welcome. So, anyway, we had some money left over from the grant. And I said, if you'd like, Dick, we could just use that to start this new type of journal, Entrepreneur Innovation Exchange. And he loved the idea. We had the Best Buy grant of $100,000 left to get it started. But the university I was at was not in favor of it. In fact, they said, we don't want you doing that. Print journals are the prestige journals. Woodrow Wilson, who was president of Princeton before he was president of the United States, said it's harder to get a graveyard relocated than to get academia to change curriculum. So they just didn't like the idea. And to an undergraduate student, you tell them we're taking the journal online interactive, have multimedia on it, interviews, video, and they say, of course. But the professorial, we're looking down the nose at it, and kind of like the bookstores looked down at Amazon.com when they first came out. And so we kind of carried the theme, we're going to be the Amazon.com of journals and change the world in terms of what it's like to be able to conveniently access information and get it published quickly, because it was taking 3 to 4 years to get things published in print journals. And so we thought we could change that and go from a blind refereeing process to transparent, where everything was out in the open and the authors could interact with the people making decisions. And so it was just kind of a game changer. But the university was so against the idea, they gave the $100,000 back to Best Buy. And so, amazing as that may seem. So I went to Dick and I said, I'm really embarrassed about this, but we can still do it. And so he said, we'll just fund it through the Schulze Foundation and we won't run the money through the university. That's how EIX survived the arcane way that academia can try to resist change.
And so it sounds like Dick Schulze played a bit of a role saving the day here, too.
He is a day saver very often. I watched him on the board of Best Buy, and there's not a person on the planet I admire more than him in terms of his capabilities or in terms of the type of friend that he is.
So no wonder you're so grateful. But I've heard you say Dick Schulze has saved other lives, too. How?
I did not know this, but I sent him a note just thanking him, just basically, thanks for saving my life, because I'd kind of given up any hope until this incredible concept that Mayo came up with came into play. And he sent me back a note. And Kim, with your permission, I just want to read it.
Please do.
I don't want to get it wrong, but this speaks volumes. He said, Jim, I don't want to be anything but honest and humble, but I can honestly say my ability to get people with complicated conditions to the best places have saved many lives and put them on track to live it to the fullest. I want the same for you, Jim. So thanks for trusting me.
Oh my God, you're making me tear up a little.
Well, Dick has that impact on me. He's a high performance friend extraordinaire.
What an inspiring story. Thank you for sharing. And a big thank you to other entrepreneurs like Dick Schulze, who use their influence, their generosity, the ingenuity to make a difference in people's lives and literally saving your life, Jim.
Well, and thanks for the opportunity to share the story, because, entrepreneurs are twice as philanthropic as the average executive. And there's just wonderful things they do. All jobs are created by entrepreneurs. And so without them, it's just what turns the economy. That's what he really wanted to do with EIX, is help more people be successful and create more successful businesses. And hopefully entrepreneurs that are successful as Dick will be as generous and giving back to the world as he has done.
I love how your story also shares we know entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and when they take that incredible ability and use it to have make a difference like he did in your life, and as you mentioned, so many others, we're so lucky to have them.
Yes. Well, and his other philanthropy as well is well known to the Schulze Foundation. He impacts over 400 nonprofits annually in the areas of education, social services, and healthcare. So, I mean, he's a high impact guy. But this personal thing that he does was something I was unaware of until I needed it.
But so many don't know this. Why do you
Yeah.
think they stay so quiet about their good deeds?
The one thing I've learned over the years, and I've had a chance to work with some really amazing people, Fred Smith with FedEx, for example, they're a lot more humble than people think they are. And they typically feel, to whom a lot has been given, a lot is expected. And I think Dick just is the type of person that expects it of himself. And it's just an amazing, wonderful thing that there are people out there like him. We want to share their stories.
Well, I hope this interview encourages more individuals like you to reach out and share their stories. Let's give these entrepreneurs the recognition they deserve. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Again, I'm Kim Eddleston with EIX and FamilyBiz.org with Jim Wetherbe. What a wonderful story. And we wish you Godspeed and get well soon.
Thank you.